Something happened in the 1200s here. Almost has to have a component of the Vikings' descendants. Based on everything we know right now, it almost has to. There weren't a lot of other people who knew about this place then.
Then Parker Schnabel helped Rick Lagina strike something buried deep beneath Oak Island, a man-made, weighty secret that had lain hidden for centuries. This isn't just another excavation. Strange metals, carefully carved beams, and a sealed chamber began to emerge from the earth, shaking the island's legendary mystery to its core. Stick around, because what they uncovered next could finally prove the treasure tales were true. It all started on a cold, grey morning. The wind raced through the trees like it was carrying an ancient whisper. Rick was near an old garden shed, not far from where countless digs had happened over the years. He'd passed this spot dozens of times, walking, staring at the ground, pacing, drawing maps, but today felt different. Something about that weathered shack drew him closer. As Rick's hand brushed the rusty door handle, it creaked, a low sound that felt almost like a warning. A gut feeling stirred, a quiet, insistent hunch that something significant lay below. Nothing flashy, no alarms, just a silent sense that they were near a real breakthrough. Jackhammers weighing 60 to 70 pounds got stuck in the dense clay. It was some of the hardest labor in years. But this wasn't about guesswork or theories, it was about uncovering concrete evidence. No magic maps, no secret blueprints, just intuition, perfectly aligned between Rick and Parker. Standing together over the dirt, eyes fixed on the same patch of earth, they knew this spot was worth it. They marked the drill site E5. To an outsider, it's just a letter and a number. But on Oak Island, every inch holds centuries-old secrets. E5 could mean everything. The crew rolled out the gear, fired up the machines, and began to dig. The drill tore into the soil like a needle tracing a wound, long hidden. Around them, the team was a well-oiled machine, checking equipment, studying readings, reviewing notes. Dr. Ian Spooner and Dr. Fred Michael worked tirelessly, collecting samples and analyzing the signals the Earth was giving off. Their tests suggested metal below, not random, not natural, man-made, something deliberately placed, something meant to be hidden. Signs of metal emerged, hints of objects buried long ago. Not just coins, not just gold, but artifacts with meaning. Could this finally lead to the legendary treasure? Clues strongly pointed that way. At around 100 feet down, the drill hit something unusual. The material pulled from the earth wasn't just muddy soil. It had structure, like fragments of a built object. Not nature, not random debris. They weren't digging for wealth alone. They were digging for proof that the stories were real, that lives spent chasing legends weren't wasted, and that Oak Island's mysteries were tangible, not just myths. The drill pressed on, inch by inch. The team was silent, tension thick in the air. Could they have hit a chamber, a vault, a hidden trove of artifacts? Plans formed on the fly. Maybe they could dig sideways, follow a hidden passage, discover a room full of secrets, or even messages from the past. But one truth remained. They couldn't stop now. The scientists confirmed that the metal below was foreign to the island's natural composition, crafted, intentional, perhaps even sealed for eternity. The stories of Oak Island run long and twisted. Pirate loot, secret societies, hidden manuscripts, royal gold, transported across oceans. Whatever the truth, Oak Island held something. Centuries of treasure hunters had tried and failed, but with Parker and Rick working side by side, it felt like the island might finally respond. Day slipped into evening. The drill's hum echoed across the site, a reminder that the search was alive. More clues surfaced. Wood too smooth to be natural, nails shaped in patterns from a distant past. Every fragment was bagged, tagged, and analyzed. No rush, no chaos, just deliberate exploration. They weren't digging dirt. They were digging into history. Even with all the technology and expertise, it came down to belief. A sense that something monumental awaited beneath. That belief coursed through the crew, igniting determination. The soil itself seemed to shift, hinting that they were closing in on something real, Oak Island's final revelation. Plans were drawn to safeguard any major finds. Rules were clear: who to contact, how to study and preserve every inch. They weren't here for a payday, they were uncovering a story. Winter winds would soon halt digging. This was the last window before months of waiting. Each drill turn could bring them closer to the greatest discovery yet, or leave them yearning for another year. Pieces of a centuries-old puzzle were finally surfacing. Parker, usually bursting with energy, stood quietly, eyes tracing the drill. Rick moved with purpose, ready to follow wherever the Earth's secrets led next. Every sample checked, every find marked, every dig driven by that burning thought. Maybe this time they were finally close. Something incredible just happened on that wild, mysterious patch of land called Oak Island. And Parker Schnabel just walked in and turned the entire hunt upside down. This isn't a dream, and they aren't messing around with shovels and guesses anymore. For Rick Lagina and his team, this could finally be the one. The discovery everyone's been whispering about for years. And it was about time. The crew had been digging relentlessly. Each scoop brought a little hope and a lot of prayers. But mostly, it was the same old. Sand, clay, more sand, nothing sparkling, nothing secret, nothing that screamed, "Here it is." The dream they chased seemed to slip further away with every shovel. But this wasn't just digging. They were studying the ground, testing it, prodding it with massive machines and precision tools. Following maps so ancient, the paper threatened to crumble at the touch. "I thought I hit something at the bottom of the spade," Rick said. And for a moment, maybe, just maybe, it was the tunnel. Experts swore this spot was special, but luck hadn't favored them yet. Cold wind, empty holes, time slipping fast. Then something strange happened. The soil itself seemed off, sticky, clay-rich, as if it once stopped water from flowing. Part of a clever trap, or proof someone had hidden something long ago, a secret meant never to be found. Theories flew: flood tunnels, pirate tricks, booby traps. Every idea bounced around like sparks, searching for one that might stick. The crew was exhausted, worn, but still hoping, and running out of options. Enter Parker Schnabel, not your average treasure hunter. He doesn't chase gold the old way. He brings swagger, instincts, and smart thinking that can turn a frustrating day into a breakthrough. Rick needed that spark. Parker leaned in, studied the findings, and saw what others missed. All that weird clay, all the strange metal traces, it wasn't just dirt. It could mean something huge, treasure huge, heavy, valuable, worth every painstaking dig. The team perked up. Energy surged through the air. With Parker on their side, the island might finally reveal its secrets. Eyes turned to the ocean too. The water here had always been odd, rising and falling in strange patterns, breaking into tunnels and shafts. Could there be a man-made flood system, centuries old, meant to stop intruders? The idea lit a fire under everyone. Fresh equipment, focused minds, Parker's no-nonsense approach. They stopped chasing every rumor and followed the hard clues. And suddenly, the pieces started to fit. Dead ends still appeared, False alarms still frustrated them, but now every sample, every metal trace, every unusual reading mattered. They were all puzzle pieces. Rick, Marty, Craig, they felt like kids again, not playing around, but dreaming big. And for once, it wasn't crazy. The dirt, the water, the tunnel theories, they all made sense. Even the metals in the water were practically shouting, "Dig here!" Fans around the world leaned in, holding their breath. Years of near misses had trained them to expect disappointment. But now, with Parker involved, it felt different. Treasure wasn't just a story. It was under their boots, hiding, waiting for one more shovel. Some skeptics call it chasing shadows, calling Oak Island a muddy joke. But those people haven't seen this team, haven't felt the thrill. This isn't luck. It's history waiting to be uncovered and maybe rewritten. Parker and Rick, two men from completely different worlds, now work together. One knows Yukon gold like it's in his blood. The other has chased soggy legends on Oak Island for decades. Their paths never crossed before, but their goal was the same: dig, uncover, reveal. And when they joined forces, it was like the island itself leaned in closer. The routine was familiar. Roll out the gear, set up the drills, scribble notes, argue over the next spot, and wait for the water or mud to throw another curveball. The garden shaft had been a headache, a wet letdown after digging past 900 feet. But Parker arrived. No speeches, no spotlight, just instinct, sharp eyes, and years of experience. He studied the site, the map, the equipment, and got to work. The shaft was giving signals, metal, maybe a hidden container. The first try brought nothing but wet muck. Parker recalibrated the scans, re-examined the data, and tried again. This time, they struck beams, thick, carved, heavy wood. Not natural, not random, built. Layered fragments glittered under lights, small pieces of precious metals, enough to make everyone pause. Then came Aladdin's Cave. The name was dramatic, but the discovery wasn't. A flooded pit, lined with wood and mystery. Cameras went down, probes scanned every corner. Bits of precious metals surfaced, small but significant. Parker suggested approaching it from a new angle, and everything changed. Even areas that had once been dead zones, like the so-called baby blob, got a second look. With Parker adjusting drill paths and rethinking the data, it felt like the island itself was finally ready to talk. It was more than just wet clay now. Wooden structures, strange patterns in the soil, things clearly built and buried with intention. Even the infamous money pit, long considered a graveyard of broken dreams, had its moment. Spots once thought empty were buzzing again. Scans and maps began to align. Threads crossed, zones overlapped. What had once been random pokes in the dirt was now strategy, careful and deliberate. Marty and I couldn't have imagined this moment, descending into the money pit together, following a plan instead of hope alone. Parker had transformed chaos into order. The island wasn't fighting back as fiercely. It was leaving breadcrumbs, tiny hints that made everyone lean closer, hold their breath, and watch every screen like their lives depended on it. Even the crew, usually worn out by the end of the season, felt recharged. New debates flared. Lists grew longer. No one was talking about quitting. Back in 2019, borehole RF1 had stirred excitement. Deep beams carved with symbols, maybe Roman numerals, had appeared, along with a pickaxe some believe was Scandinavian. The history buffs went wild, but without context, it faded. Now, those same symbols were part of current dig plans. Suddenly, what was old felt alive again. Then there was Borehole H8 from 2017. Fragments of a vault, scraps of parchment, even leather from a book cover. At the time, it was a huge find, but no follow-up was possible. With Parker pushing the team to connect the dots, these old discoveries were finally part of a bigger picture. Loose pieces were forming a puzzle. Oak Island never gives straightforward answers. One week, you pull out iron scraps, the next, a beam that looks centuries old. Theories pile higher than the drills. But now, they weren't just stacking stories, they were cross-referencing, marking, and matching timelines. Every clue got a second chance. They weren't expecting a glowing treasure chest. This isn't about fairy tales anymore. It's about proving that something real was hidden here, something someone intended to remain secret. Hundreds have tried and failed, leaving only mud-stained clothes and frustration behind. But Rick and his team keep going, because the story sticks. One more foot down, one more inch to the side. Maybe that's all it takes. This isn't a TV cliffhanger. It's real work, real dirt, real mystery. Rick and Parker aren't showmen. They're hunters, dreamers, problem solvers, folders full of new data, markers on untouched spots, soil samples pulled and tested twice, old assumptions rechecked. They're on it. The island isn't quiet. It's whispering. And they're not just listening. They're chasing the whispers, pushing the clues, making the island reveal more than it ever has. Each layer uncovered could be a step closer. By the end of the season, their lists filled whiteboards and screens alike. They're not guessing anymore. They're targeting. The deeper they dug, the more Oak Island seemed alive. Every scoop of soil told a story. Twisted roots, clay-packed earth, fragments of wood, evidence of human hands shaping something long ago. It wasn't random, not nature, not chance. Someone had built here with purpose, and centuries later, Rick and Parker were finally piecing it together. Patterns in the layers emerged, beams aligned with tunnels. Metal traces followed lines no one had noticed before. The crew began to see the bigger picture, a complex design hidden beneath the surface, hints of structures meant to hide, protect, maybe even trap. It was the kind of precision that made you step back and think, who could have engineered this so long ago? And why? The money pit, infamous for swallowing hopes and tools alike, suddenly felt like it was offering clues. Zones that had always been dismissed as empty now held secrets. Every scan, every probe, every sample was like a tiny spark, illuminating the shadows of history. The island wasn't just resisting them. It was guiding them, giving the team subtle signs that made them lean in closer, hold their breath, and think carefully before each move. Old discoveries suddenly connected. The carved beams from Borehole RF1, the Scandinavian pickaxe, the scraps of leather and parchment from H8. They weren't isolated incidents. They were part of a network of hints leading to something bigger. Parker's methodical approach meant that every clue, old or new, was analyzed, cross-referenced, and used to plan the next dig. It wasn't just about treasure anymore. The goal was proving that someone centuries ago had left evidence that Oak Island was more than legend. It was a place engineered with intelligence and intent. Every time the drill turned, the stakes rose. Every strange metal reading, every beam, every pattern brought them closer to a story the island had been hiding for hundreds of years. Even the crew, seasoned and exhausted from years of digging, felt a renewed energy. Ideas bounced across the site. Plans were revised. Notes were scrutinized. Patterns were mapped. Oak Island wasn't just a puzzle. It was a living history lesson demanding respect. Rick and Parker worked side by side like a single mind. One brought decades of Oak Island experience. The other, the sharp instincts and intuition of a seasoned prospector. Together, they weren't just chasing gold. They were decoding a secret history, one layer at a time. And with each new clue, the possibility of uncovering the legendary treasure, or at least proving the island held something monumental, felt closer than ever. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the machines hummed and lights glowed over the site. Each layer peeled back was a glimpse into the past, a whisper of those who had come before. And for the first time in years, it felt like Oak Island might finally be ready to reveal its secrets. Could the island want to stay buried, or is all this digging finally waking something meant to stay hidden? Drop your theories in the comments. Hit like and don't forget to subscribe. You won't want to miss what comes next.